hit record here. Okay, so as we join on here, Ben Loveman is a lawyer with actually a partner, excuse me, with the Reeves Immigration Law Firm in San Francisco is where you're based, right, Ben?
That's right, Allie. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Obviously, a lot of questions surrounding immigration. We've got Title 42 coming up. We have kind of an influx at the border of what we've been seeing. We just surpassed 1 million encounters over this last year at the southern border. So, we have a lot of people that are asking questions as to why this is happening, if this is really people's only option, because that's what we're seeing at the border, and what needs to be done or what can be done. So let's first start. What is your experience with immigration law, and why did you get started in that realm?
Yeah, I came to immigration law out of an interest in helping families be together, helping people reunite, helping people seek justice here in the United States, find their dreams and their families' dreams. I've been doing it since 2006, and it's gotten more complex and more rewarding with time. So as we solve one problem, we find another one, and there's always a new issue emerging, and it goes in waves.
What would you say is the biggest issue that's discussed in your law firm? What's the thing that's thrown around the most that's like, we should be fixing that, or that should not exist?
There's so many issues, it's hard to really put a finger on one, but in the trenches day to day, we're just trying to solve our clients' problems as they come to us. But on the bigger policy things, there's issues with huge visa backlogs, numerical limitations by country, where people can't really immigrate to the United States through these promised pathways, through family-based immigration, even through employment-based immigration. So, people say, take the right pathway, follow the rules. But if you get in these lines can stretch for decades. And then right at the finish line, there's always something that happens that pulls the rug right out from someone's case. So when you tell someone to get in a line, there really needs to be a line there for them to get in.
So when people say that, because that is often the conversation that's had, right? Do it the right way. We're all for legal migration, right? Everybody says that. That's on one side of the spectrum. So what is there a right way right now? And I mean, I said it feels pretty arbitrary. Before I started recording, I said everything just keeps moving. It's almost like a day by day, sector by sector. Everything is dependent on where you're from one day, and then the next day it's based on something else. So is there something people should be doing that's quote unquote the right thing?
Well, certainly there's legal pathways under our immigration law to becoming a permanent resident, to sponsoring your family. But whether those pathways are actually functioning is a different question. I mean, they work for some people, immediate relatives, U.S. citizen spouses, those generally work. But if you're not married to a U.S. citizen, or if you're coming from certain countries, there can be huge issues, huge lines, and it's just really not realistic. There's some categories that are backlogged for decades or longer, 30, 40 years. So if you ask someone to just get in that line and wait while they're living in a place where they're unsafe or separated from their family by thousands of miles, it's not really realistic. Right, yeah, so I mean, it's not a situation where everyone can just queue up and come in that way.
And can you explain a little bit, because from my understanding, when they go across a port of entry, which would be what people view as illegal entry, right? What, from my understanding, is right now, obviously Title 42 is in place. And so a lot of those people would be going back. Remain in Mexico is in place. So a lot of people will be going back. But from what I understand is if they go across a port of entry to claim asylum, they do have to wait in Mexico while that kind of plays out. Is that true?
Well, this situation has been a mess, compounded by the pandemic, compounded by the Trump administration shifting to the Biden administration, coming from the Obama administration, and different rules constantly shift on the ground. So what you'll hear one day, or what the rules will be one day, won't be the same the next day. So for a while, everyone's stuck here at this camp, this awful camp where they're in danger. They just fled from danger. Now they're back in danger at this camp. The next day you'll hear of someone who got in by some chance, or got a number and got in line by the border officials. They're making ad hoc policies as they go. So it's hard for me, even on a day-to-day basis, to know what the current situation is on the ground. Even if the administration's saying something in Washington, then the situation that's actually happening at the border is totally different. But yeah, with Title 42 going away, people are eager to have that gone. But what's going to happen, and as a result, we're not sure. The system's still going to be overloaded. People are still going to be required to wait just because of the sheer numbers. So there's still going to be a humanitarian situation going on.
And now you said, people are eager for Title 42 to go away. And obviously that's on either side of kind of the pendulum here. It's an argument right now among several states, that are suing the Biden administration because not necessarily because Title 42 is going away, but because there's not a plan in place to kind of quell this humanitarian crisis that we all are bracing for. It's kind of inevitable, right? We're seeing hundreds, we're seeing thousands already come across the border daily. So what are you guys preparing for? Obviously, you're on the communication side once they make it into the US. So what are you preparing for as an immigration law firm if Title 42, does go away May 23rd?
Right. Well, we're preparing to be ready to help a lot more people to process their cases or file for asylum, which is a lawful pathway, as you mentioned. When you get to the border and you make a claim for asylum, you're following a legal pathway. This is the laws that we have here in the United States. And so when people come to the border and they ask asylum, they're doing what the law allows. And so when people say, oh, they should wait in some other line because this is not the right way, that's not correct in my view. So these people making claims at the border, they're entitled to make their claims, and we're here to help them flesh out their claims, gather evidence, and navigate the complex process, and guide them with how to integrate themselves while they're waiting for their claims to be heard, because there's simply not enough immigration officers, immigration judges to handle the cases in a rapid period of time.
So at what point does your law firm get involved? Because there's a lot of migrants right now that are being released either on parole, some of them are being released on ATD, which is the alternate to detention. So they might have a cell phone as a tracking device or an ankle monitor. Are you involved in that step, or is it later on? Or when does a law firm get involved with an immigration case?
It really depends, and it varies case by case. Sometimes we're contacted by our clients' family members when they're initially held in custody at the border. Other times they're released from custody and they come to us. They don't know when their court date is. They have their paperwork about, reporting to ICE just to check in and things like that. But they don't know what's going to happen next. So they're given kind of basic information. They're released, and then the system might not function that well to give them a court date or to give them instructions. So they come to us at various states of their cases, and we try to get their case back on track. And part of that, and a big key, is to file their applications within 1 year of their arrival. And some people just aren't aware of this requirement, or weren't told, or are scared, or whatever. And if they miss that deadline, then they could lose the right to apply for asylum altogether. So we try to spot that issue first and help them navigate their claims wherever they're at.
So they have a full year before they have to hit a deadline to claim a credible fear, basically, right?
Well, so when they're filing for the credible fear is a little bit different than the asylum application, but U.S. asylum law requires that they make their actual asylum application within 1 year of arrival to the United States. So the credible fear claim is kind of a precursor to the asylum claim.
What's the difference? What's the main difference? Is it just what comes along with it when they say it? I mean, because I think, and I don't want to make assumptions, but I think it gets confused not only by us, but also potentially by migrants as well.
Right. So the credible fear, you could think of it as sort of like a pre-screening, so that it's not an asylum officer, although they're making a new rule to change this issue. Sometimes it's an asylum officer now, actually. So they've had asylum officers at the border doing credible fear interviews. Before it wasn't. Trump had CPB officers assigned to doing it, and they had no training. But the credible fear is a pre-screening. So if they make a basic claim to asylum and the officer finds them to be credible, and they say, oh, maybe you could make a claim to asylum, then they'll be released into the country and allow it to present their case. If they're not found to have a credible fear for whatever reason, if they say, for instance, I came here just because I need to find work, or some other reason that doesn't qualify for them for asylum, or doesn't potentially qualify for them for asylum, then they can be just summarily removed from the United States and their claims denied.
Okay. It's weird too, because, a lot of us that were out there boots on the ground, when I'm speaking with migrants, most of them are like, trabajo, we want to work, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have a credible fear or that they don't have an asylum claim. That's just now what they want now. And that's kind of it sounds like what they know to kind of push for, because that's why they want to be here at the end of the day, is to make a better life and to flee one that might have been bad.
Yeah, certainly. If you're coming to a new country, you're definitely going to need to work to support yourself and your family, and oftentimes you are leaving for combinations of reasons: political violence, social unrest, also lack of job opportunities, and inability to support your family and children. I often put myself in their shoes, and I see my clients and I say, well, this is exactly what I would be doing if I was raised or came up in this situation or faced this situation. I wouldn't stand by idly while my kids are suffering. So I mean, they have little choice. So they come here, they're looking to work, they're looking to gain protection from the problems they had back home. But to win their asylum case, it can't just be based purely on economic conditions.
Okay, now, when you say they're doing what they can to protect their families, which we obviously have seen families separated in the past. Right now, what's interesting to me is we're seeing a lot of kids come over alone. We saw 14,000 kids at the southern border unaccompanied in the last month. So if that's the case, why are parents sending their kids alone if they're, the theory is it's easier to get in with a family, right? That's kind of what people think and say. B, this, the whole idea is to have a better life for your family. I know it's to have it for the kid, but there's a chance your kid could potentially die or be, human trafficked. And we know those things are happening. So I guess, what are your comments on that? With that many thousands of kids unaccompanied at the southern border, and a lot of people just look at it as, oh, that's Border Patrol separating them and that's why they're unaccompanied, but they actually arrive there alone.
Yeah, and when I first came to immigration law, I was always very surprised by the fact that families are willing to separate short-term or even long-term in order to make a better future for themselves in the long term, or to protect themselves from a dire situation. So if I think that the only way that I can protect my children is to send them this way, and even though it's a dangerous route, even though there are dangers along the way, if the only way I can protect my children, or the best way I can think to protect my children and provide some semblance of opportunity for them, is to send them on their own, or accompanied by someone I've paid, or a family member or something like that, then I would do that too. I'm not going to sit by and watch my own, and I wouldn't want my children in danger. I wouldn't expect them to leave their children in danger. Yeah. It seems crazy to people to see people sending their children on long bus rides, train rides, but if it's the less worse situation, then you'll send your children that way.
So this one that was really shocking to me, because I've seen a lot of kids, obviously, but this one was a 2-year-old that was with 38 other migrants who no one would say they knew him, nothing. And he was by himself, a 2-year-old. That is dangerous. I mean, 2-year-olds can't survive that, right? I mean, that's just a lot. Right. So I mean, I don't know their circumstances. I don't pretend to, but that one, that child's lucky to have survived.
I agree. And when I hear these stories, it just blows your mind what people are willing to do and things that they have to go through. And so we hope that the US as a society can at least greet them in a friendly and humanitarian way, and not put them through more torture. Even if we're going to eventually deny their claims, we should not inflict additional harm on these people.
Yeah. Now, before we go into that, because we want to talk about that, obviously, so important for us to know how to reintegrate, what people can do, what resources are there. But first, do you know the process? Say a father, because this little boy had his birth certificate in his pocket with his father's address written on the back. Now, if that father, say that person is in Guatemala, does the US bring that father over to reunite? Like, what do you know the process of what happens next for that little boy?
What they're going to do is look for a family member or a guardian who's in the United States, who's able to take them. And usually if you're sending your children, you have someone in mind where they're going to end up. So they're going to try to identify that person and get them into a safe spot, or into the Office of Refugee Resettlement, where they'll be in more of a suitable shelter, which is appropriate, rather than these detention centers and cages that we were hearing about a few years ago. But there are cases out there where they haven't been able to find people, or where they've been separated and they haven't been able to reunite people. And still to this day, they're still looking to reunite these people. So I'd say that there might be a process, there might be people in charge of that process, but it's not a perfect one, of course. And it's a frankly, it's a difficult one. You know, you have to go search for these people's family and they don't always want to come forward.
Is there truth that on the other side of the border that, you know, the cartels are also separating families? It's not only happening on this side, because they are running the game on that side, right? And we know that kids are recycled, you know, to go across with pseudo families and things like that. Is that a conversation at all?
Certainly, I mean, in all aspects of immigration law and in really in all of our big bureaucratic systems, Social Security and everything, there's an element of fraud, there's an element of crime being involved. So it's going to be there, and we should properly try to root it out and identify it and protect the victims and protect our country from people that would try to take advantage of it. So definitely there's cartels involved. I mean, I haven't done any firsthand reporting on it or anything, but it's well known that they're involved in the process and they have their hands in everything pretty much going on down there.
Do you guys hear about that from your clients? I mean, I know right now people are paying Mexican police thousands of dollars. I mean, the Mexican police are involved as per, you know, conversations I've had with migrants. Is that something that they tell you, or at that juncture, are they kind of moved on from that part, or do they talk about what happened in Mexico on their way over?
We do get into, asking them about their travels and things like that. It's not directly crucial to their claim for asylum or protection, how they arrived here. So we don't really dive into the details or push them on it. And oftentimes they don't want to recount that or they just want to move on and make their claim. So it's not something that we always go into in so much detail.
Yeah, it is definitely something that's hard to get information from. I've talked to a lot of women you can tell that the situation is a very sensitive one.
Certainly.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about reintegrating into society. These people, the situation that they're in for a lot of these folks, this might be the pathway, like you said, that they have available to them right now. So once they get here, they're going through their asylum claims. What is that process looking like for them? How long is that duration generally? And what's really available to them? Can they go to school? Can they work? What's the system that we know is broken setting up for these people?
So they will not be entitled to work permits immediately, but if they file their asylum applications and they're not decided, generally speaking, within 150 days now, they then can apply for work permit. And then at the 180-day mark from the date they file their application, they can actually be issued a work permit. That is, unless a judge has denied their application before that date, or if they've caused delay in the process themselves by asking for a continuance or something, rescheduling their hearing, delaying the case. So then they won't be entitled to a work permit in that situation. But so there is a pathway to getting the work permit, but the administration's goal and the court's goal and the system's goal is to try to process their cases before they can qualify for work permits. I mean, that's sort of the goal.
Okay. But
so
with the backlog, isn't that hard? I mean, isn't that where we're at? Is this massive backlog that's impacting both immigration and US citizens, right?
It is. It's very hard for the system to do that, for the asylum office, for the immigration judges to finish the cases. But what they did under the Trump administration is they prioritized, and they continue to do this, new cases. And so that means that people that have been waiting forever, they're going to be getting work permits, and they'll be able to renew their work permits, which is beneficial to them and to society. These people have been here years already anyway. But the new cases are getting priority. So most of them are being decided fairly quickly, but some are not. And it's sort of hit or miss where it happens. It feels very arbitrary. And then on the other side of things too, the people that have been waiting, a lot of them do want to have their claims heard because they're still separated from their families. So it's causing various harms and benefits to both sides of the line, depending on what your interests are. But yeah, so it's not a perfect system, but they tried before. Anyways, it's not working perfectly at the moment.
Yeah.
And people can qualify for work permits. And on the school side, sorry, go ahead.
But it takes time to get that work permit. You're not going to be over here and you're not going to be working in the next week. I mean, legally, at least.
You won't be, yeah, there'll be no way that you'll have a work permit within a week.
Okay.
The earliest would be 180 days from the date you filed your application for asylum.
Okay, great.
And on the school side, kids are being enrolled in school, and that's probably going to depend on where you end up settling, how good the services are for the children. my brother-in-law, he's a refugee coordinator at the Oakland school districts in Oakland, and they have a good system set up, and he's trying his best to help integrate these new students into the school system. So people can enroll in school in most places, and they do so, but it's a struggle for them because their parents aren't working or they don't have a source of revenue, and maybe they have to go to work, and they're learning a new language. So it's a difficult situation.
Yeah, I was going to ask what that process is like. I mean, I know that some of the migrants that I keep in touch with that are from Venezuela, the husband was looking for work for quite a while, obviously found a job under the table right now while he waits, which is really common, we'll go into that a little bit more, but, she was like, I can't work because I can't pay for daycare, while my other kids in school and things like that. So they have very normal problems that we are all facing, but they're being forced kind of to work illegally while they wait for a legal process.
Right. And yeah, and like you said, the problems compounded, the problems that we all have trying to work and care for our kids and afford daycare is compounded by the fact that they've just arrived here. They've just fled from persecution or harm in most cases, or very, unstable situation. And now they're here. They're brand new. They don't have a good source of revenue or savings. They spent the money getting here possibly, and they're trying to get their kids to school and try to find some work. So it's very challenging for them. And I empathize.
Mm-hmm. Now, are they able, because I know the refugees through the Operation Allies with DHS, I know that Afghan refugees, a lot of them were given social security numbers. Is that, at what point in the process is that available to people who have immigrated here? Do you know? Or if that's like a special cases or what that is?
Yeah, I mean, there's various special programs like that for recent arrivals from Afghanistan, and there's some other parole programs for people. Like there was one for people from Cuba and other programs. There was one for Filipino veterans of World War II. But generally speaking, you won't get a social security number until you get a work permit, because you have no need for one. And to qualify for one, basically you need to show that you're here lawfully and that you have the right to work. So that's really, usually you won't get a social security number unless you're authorized to work.
Okay, so within 180 days, maybe, that would be the soonest, unless you have
if you qualify.
Situation like a refugee potentially with a TPS status or something like that might be different.
Exactly, and if you're authorized to work some other way, or you're admitted as a humanitarian parole from some other country or for some emergency situation, you can get one faster.
Okay, now from where you sit, at what point, I mean, do you believe that there's a crisis at the southern border, I suppose, is my first leg of this question.
I think there's a lot of people in danger, a lot of people suffering, but I don't think it's necessarily a crisis in the sense that it's been ongoing. So maybe it's a long-term crisis, a long-term disaster, and it's a consequences of US policy for a long time. So I mean, this is getting away from my field of expertise, but I don't see this as a new situation really. It's cyclical, it goes up and down, and we need to figure out solutions to this problem. It's a problem in other parts of the world too. You see refugees from the Middle East and from Africa going to Europe, and it's a similar problem. And I don't see this as a particular crisis. There's a wave right now. There's a lot of political attention to it right now.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you have these conversations with migrants that come to you guys, I think we've seen 167 nationalities over the last year cross our border. What are you seeing the most? Are you seeing people from the Northern Triangle? Are you seeing people from the Middle East? I mean, I've run into just about everybody, even China. So where are you seeing people from, for the most part, that need your help?
So there's a bit in San Francisco in the Bay Area. I have a big influx of clients from Nicaragua, from El Salvador, and again, from all over the world. We have some Ukrainian clients that have come that way too, and China, like you mentioned, India even. So people do make their way that way. People will make their way any way they can to try to try to follow this process and protect themselves. But Central America, Nicaragua, El Salvador, we're seeing a lot of that right now.
Okay. And right now, are those, because typically they would be potentially processed under Title 42, right? Right now, I believe they're being processed under Title 8. And so if they have a credible fear, then that process starts rolling, I believe. And so that's would make sense of why we're seeing kind of a little influx of that right now.
Right. So the Title 42 was basically this health related pandemic, and basically it's a real situation and there's a real problem. We want to protect the United States from people coming that might have health issues or COVID-19, but it was a way to also use that to stop people from immigrating. So it basically just suspended the entry or their ability to be processed. And now with that being lifted, now they're going to be able to make the claims they were able to make before the pandemic.
So, I mean, obviously Title 42, it's still there, it's in effect. For the most part, what I'm learning from border agents is in specific sectors, they have stopped processing for Title 42 kind of early. They're doing Title 8. So you might be seeing more of that kind of show up as well in your next couple of months. But something that we're seeing a lot of is Cuban immigration right now. A lot of people from Cuba. When I walked with the caravan, there were a lot of people also from Cuba, most of them saying they're fleeing political persecution and, seeking asylum. Now, why are we seeing this right now? What is, we can delve into a little bit of what's happening in these countries, kind of the root causes that our administration, doesn't really delve into that much, I think, as much as they could. But why Cuba right now? Why are we seeing an influx of Cuban migration?
Well, there's as is the case usually, there's push and pull factors and factors on the ground in Cuba and then U.S. policy as well. What we've seen over the last couple of years in Cuba is that the U.S. embassy in Cuba has been closed for large periods of time. So even people that have sponsored them and are eligible to immigrate have had a hard time getting interviews. They need to go to Guyana to have their interviews done. So with the embassy closed, people can't immigrate that way, or they have to travel outside the country to process their cases. And then we have the political problems that are going on in Cuba. There's a lot of political persecution going on. So people are being pushed from the country. They want to leave the country. So I think it's a combination of those two things, this kind of pent up demand to immigrate to the United States is caused by the embassy closures, then by the pandemic, and the continued, the embassy is just now reopening on a limited basis for very limited number of cases. So there's still this huge pent up demand. So
with people that are, wanting to immigrate here from Cuba, are they living anywhere else before they're coming here? Or have they left, years ago? We saw that a lot with Haitians when they were immigrating into Del Rio. We saw that a lot of them were living in maybe Cuba, but maybe also Colombia or Panama.
Yeah, I can't speak to this with too much expertise, but I do think that there are people that have been outside the country and then they're waiting for the time when it makes sense for them to immigrate, whether they've saved up enough or the U.S. policy is favorable or whatever.
Now, when they finally get here, we're talking about thousands, hundreds of thousands. Is there, what kind of stress does that bring? Is there stress on these local communities, or has the infrastructure been able to step up? Has the administration been able to respond really over the last year, because this has been just on an uptick, right? And some of it because of the levee breaking, right? Because administrations change and the pendulum's been going aggressively from left to right, which that's not the answer either. I think everybody agrees. But when we see that, is that a fear, or do we have the infrastructure in place to handle what kind of is inevitable here? We've seen a lot of health issues, a lot of people being hurt on their journeys, local hospitals on top of, we are still in a pandemic, regardless of, Title 42 or not.
Yeah, I think that the communities that are facing the brunt of the new arrivals and have to deal with the initial arrivals, they are impacted. And anytime you have a large group of people, thousands of people coming, there are going to be bad actors amongst those people, or desperate people that are desperate and who might commit crimes. I don't think they'll be data to show that they commit crimes at any higher rate than the rest of us Americans or everyone that's here already. But anyways, there will be cases that you can pick out and say, look, this person did this, he was an immigrant, or he's a new arrival. So then you can kind of demonize them. But generally speaking, I think we have a system here, we have an infrastructure here that can handle these people and can treat them fairly and treat them with respect and deliver the promise of the United States. We have thousands square miles available for new arrivals, and we have a labor shortage going on, and it's getting worse and worse every day. It's hard to find people to fill jobs. So these people are coming here because they are getting jobs with work permits or not. And if we can find a way to incorporate them legally with temporary worker programs or to more quickly process employment-based visa cases, then perhaps they won't have to come this other way.
I mean, obviously you've heard it too, and I've heard it, and I don't know the response or a rebuttal to it or how to refute it or to agree with it, confirm it. Is there truth behind, people that are here that are waiting for their claims, taking jobs from students that are, in high school and college? They're not able to get entry-level jobs because they're all taken, all these things. Is there truth to that?
I mean, at the moment, I can pretty confidently say no. I've heard recently that this is the best time to be looking for a job if you're a high school or college student. Every store in where I'm from, I see help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. We have employers calling us, every day asking, how can we sponsor more foreign workers? We need help. We need more nurses. We need more people to help with the crops in the grocery stores. We need more people to do everything. And if there was enough US workers, they wouldn't be calling us.
Yeah, we've got a lot of people that don't want to do a lot of those jobs probably that are available to them, right? It's a common conversation people have. So do you believe that the American dream is still alive and well, my friend?
Yeah, I think it is. And there's a lot of people that are out there fighting for it every day. And we do our best to help too. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. I know you have to go. I just need to ask you one last question. What is a solution you see for what we're dealing with along the southern border? Obviously, the policies change often, but what is a solution that you see from where you sit?
Just one last big question. That is the $1 million question. I think we need to have a combination of fair and humane systems, more staffing at the border, more staffing at the immigration courts, more staffing at the asylum offices, better training, and then combine that with civil policies for immigration through other means like employment sponsorship and temporary guest workers and things like that. And those combination things can help to alleviate the demand at the border for asylum claims, and at the same time ramp up the capacity of the system to handle these cases fairly.
Yeah, if everybody's there able to do the jobs they're hired for instead of spread so thin, we might be able to get somewhere, huh?
That'd be nice.
Well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate you so very much. Thanks for all you're doing, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
My pleasure. Look forward to it.
Take care. Bye-bye.